my name is Florence. I'm a dementia engagement specialist based in the UK. And today I want to talk about learning and memory with dementia, because that's a subject I just find fascinating. And I think knowing about learning and about memory can really help empower the person living with dementia and therefore also empower the care partner. Today's talk was live, but the recording did not function. So I'm recording it again. This way everybody can see it. Just a little disclaimer that the content discussed in this talk is for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for medical or psychological advice or treatment. Always check with your doctor, with your medical team to see what's going on with your loved one or with yourself if you're the person living with dementia. A little bit about me. I'm Florence. I'm originally from Switzerland, so if you hear a bit of an accent, that's where it's from. I grew up speaking French and Swiss German, which is why if you can't figure out which it is, it's apparently a bit of both. I have a master's degree in psychology, which I obtained in Switzerland. I majored in cognitive neuroscience because I just loved learning about the brain and how it works, and it just keeps amazing me. I also trained in hypnotherapy and in relaxation techniques, so progressive muscle relaxation and autogenic training. When it comes to dementia, I also participated in trainings with the positive approach to care so that I can learn how to support people living with dementia in an effective manner. I've worked with people living with dementia in Switzerland, in the US, and now in England, where I opened my practice, Dementia Partnered Care, to support people living with dementia and their families. My services that are related to today's talk are the dementia support for families. So that's really mostly to meet with family members who are facing challenges so that we can talk about how they can adapt their approach and the environment to make life easier for both themselves and the person living with dementia. Then I have individual cognitive stimulation program and a group cognitive stimulation program for people living with dementia, and I do encourage family members to participate as well. Just this way, it allows everybody to enjoy a moment together. We often do games, do fun things together, and it also gives ideas for the family members for when somebody is feeling bored or needs a bit of a distraction. It gives a lot of ideas. For learning and memory, it also shows what abilities are still kept for the person and how we can encourage those abilities to remain. All right. If you want to know more about my services, just check out my website, dementiapartneredcare.co.uk. So what to expect today? Today we're going to be talking about dementia first, just making sure we all have the same definition. Then we're going to talk about memory, what it is, and then I want to present one study that was done with people living with dementia, just so that you have one example of what is still possible with someone living with dementia. And then we're going to be looking at daily living situations and how we can maybe change the way we approach the situation or get new ideas. So what is dementia? Dementia reflects an abnormal decline in the person's ability to function in day-to-day life. So it is not normal aging, it's something that goes further than that. It is a syndrome, so a collection of symptoms that can affect memory, which is what we're going to be talking about today, behavioral, decision-making, language, the five senses, and with that in mind, I have a workshop on the visual changes that happen with dementia. So if you're interested in that, check out my website. It also affects attention and other areas of daily living. Every person is affected differently, which is why it's really important to keep that in mind when we accompany someone living with dementia, because one technique that works with one person doesn't mean it will work with somebody else. And when you're listening to my talk today, I invite you to see it as just opening a window of possibilities, not getting one idea that you can do with your loved one or an advice that you can do with your loved one, but more of, okay, this is a window of opportunity. What can I take from this and transfer it to my personal situation? It is degenerative, which means it does get worse with time. And at Dementia Partnered Care, I'm not offering a cure or anything like that. My goal is really to make the bad days more approachable and the good days more enjoyable. It's not going to change the fact that dementia will progress. Unfortunately, you can be the best of the best and still dementia will progress. So one question that I have for you, and when you're listening to the talk, I'd love for you to write it in the comments. Do you need to remember an event in order to learn from it? Personally, before I started psychology, first of all, I don't think I ever thought of it. And if I did, I would probably have said, well, yes, you need to remember an event in order to learn from it. Today, I want to make the case that actually you can learn new skills without remembering an event that happened. So let's look into that. So we have two different pathways that I want to talk about today. One is explicit memory, which is all of the memories where we need to be conscious about the event or the thing in order to remember it. So for instance, I need to be conscious about remembering what I ate yesterday. It's not something that just comes like this. I have to kind of start thinking and bring it to my awareness so that I can talk and say it. And in that explicit memory, there are two that I want to talk about today. There are more than that, but let's not go into all the details. We have episodic memory, which are events, like I said, and then we have semantic memory, which would be facts and knowledge. So knowing what is the capital of Switzerland, or knowing who is the King of England, or the President of the United States. Things like that, which are just facts and knowledge that we know either about the world or about ourselves. Then we have implicit memory, which are skills and habits. And those do not require us to be conscious about remembering it in order to remember it. It kind of sounds weird, I know. I honestly don't know how to make it sound less weird, but let's look at some examples so that it may be making more sense. So the first one is muscle memory, which I'm taking the example of brushing my teeth. I don't remember my parents teaching me how to brush my teeth, and yet when I have a toothbrush in my hand, I know what to do with it. So that's muscle memory. Then we have conditioning, which are those things where we connect one stimuli to a specific event. So for instance, my alarm, whenever I hear the sound of my alarm, kind of cringe. I'm like, oh no. Even though I'm already awake and I may be in the train or something like that, as soon as I hear somebody's phone ringing and it's the same ringtone as my alarm, I cringe. And I'm sure you do too. So that's conditioning. I've associated the tone of my alarm to waking up. And the probability, well, I already got you there because I bet you were expecting me to go from the top to the bottom, because that was the most probable way of doing it, but I did not. Sneaky me. Another example that's more related to dementia now is the way the person may feel with us when they see us. So if I have a great time with someone, the probability of me having another good time with them is more likely. And so for someone living with dementia, it's still being able for some people to learn those probabilities, to learn that, okay, you're nice one time, the second time you're nice, the third time you're nice. Probably we're going to have a good time next time you come. Let's look at one study just to illustrate what happens with someone living with dementia. Now, in this study, it's with people with mild Alzheimer's disease. Like I said at the beginning, every person is different. It can be because simply every human being is different. It can also be because the disease is not the same. And so this is one study, one example. It doesn't mean it's going to be exactly that way for your loved one. We're opening a window of possibilities, and it is then for you to observe what you can see. So in this study, they had 3 tasks for people living with dementia, with mild Alzheimer's disease, like I said, and for healthy controls. And one of the tasks was solving a jigsaw, so a 15-piece jigsaw. The other task was a Japanese phoneme recognition, so they couldn't see what they had in their hands, and they gave them a piece kind of like this. I asked Perplexity to do those, so it's not exactly what was in the task, but it's just to illustrate it, to make it more understandable. So they gave one of those pieces to the person in their hands and asked them, what is this phoneme? And then the third exercise was more about motor skills. So they had something that looks kind of like that. Again, I asked Perplexity to create that. I'm not saying it's exactly what they had. But the idea is really to create something where the person needs to be coordinated and to learn how to move their hands, how to move their arm in order to draw a shape, a specific shape. And so they had one task like this to test, which they did the first day. And then for 3 days, including the first day, so day 1, they did the baseline experiment. Then for day 1, day 2, day 3, they trained people. So they had to do the same task, but with another stimuli. And then on day 3, they had to do the task again. And the training was 3 times a day for 3 days. And what they realized was, for instance, with the jigsaw, so 11 people living with dementia were able to solve the puzzle, which means for 9 people, this specific puzzle at this specific difficulty level was too difficult for them. If they had adapted it, maybe some of them would have been able to solve the puzzle. But because it's a research, well, we go with what we have. And what they realized with those who were able to solve the puzzle is that they improved their speed from day 1 to day 3. which means that they did gain some skills. However, if you ask them the names of the flowers that were on the puzzle, they were less good than the controls to remember those names, which shows that the explicit memory was more impaired than the implicit memory, which was still possible to learn from. Or to learn with. And then with the Japanese phoneme, again, 24 people living with dementia were able to recognize the shapes, which means that 15 were not able to do it. Yes, my math is not the best. So 24 were able to do the task, and when they did that, they did improve their speed. So they were faster at recognizing the objects from between day 1 and day 3. And again, they were as fast as the controls to recognize the objects. However, if you ask them which phoneme did you have to recognize, this was more difficult for them to remember than for someone who was healthy. And then if we look at motor skills, well, all of the participants were able to do the task, and they were as good as controls to do it. So this is one study that I just find really interesting, to think that even if you have dementia, even if you have Alzheimer's disease and your recalling of past event is becoming more challenging, there's still a possibility to learn a skill. So what does that imply for everyday life with dementia? To me, what that implies is, first of all, that routine matters. Because if every day we have the same routine, that I wake up, then I take a shower, then I eat breakfast, then I go for a walk, then it's a relaxing book, and so on, I have quite a similar routine, then I'm pretty sure that when I'm going to wake up, I can go to the bathroom and take my shower. If I shower sometimes after waking up, sometimes after eating, sometimes in the evening before going to bed, then it's very difficult for me to have this what's probably gonna come next in my day. And it doesn't have to be a strict routine of we're going for a walk, we're doing the same walk every day, or we're always doing reading the same book or a book or so on. It's just this idea of, okay, we wake up, we have shower, we eat, then we might do a musical activity, and the activity can change every day. It's just the idea of having music. The second implication that I see is that participation in everyday task matters. So trying to include the person in daily living situations. When I realized that it's starting to be more challenging to make coffee, trying to still prompt the person and guide the person into, okay, so first step is placing the cup under the machine, then you push this button, then you do this, and having them do it instead of saying, oh, it's starting to be too challenging to make the coffee, so let me do it for you. This way we keep practicing what's still kept. Now we're going to be looking at some examples of everyday life. Like I said, it's the idea of opening a window of possibilities. It's not the idea of telling you what to do with your loved one, because everybody is different. It's just creating some ideas and yeah, opening a window of possibilities. So if I have someone who keeps asking me, what are we doing today? And every 5 minutes, what are we doing today? What are we doing today? What are we doing today? Often what we can see is that people rely on explicit memory. So it's going to be, we're going for a walk in 10 minutes, and then we're doing this and that. Then 5 minutes later, so what do we do today? we're going for a walk and then we're going this and that. So what do we do today? And then some people will start trying to distract the person, which is a good solution. If the person is feeling anxious and everything, having strategies that help distract them and bring the stress down, very good. Another thing that may happen, and that's less helpful, is at some point you start saying, okay, you asked me 5 minutes ago, can you please just stop? And so if distraction is difficult for you and your response is, you've asked me 5 minutes ago, and you know it's not really the best solution, but in the same time, well, you're tired, you've had a long day, and it's just suffocating. Well, here's another idea, and this one will need training, so that will need, it's not going to happen in a day, but the idea is to have a calendar or something that the person has either on them, or it's stuck in the fridge, or it's at the door, in the living room, or anything where it feels most appropriate. And if your loved one is able to participate and to decide with you where to place the calendar, amazing. That's really the best way. It's including the person in the decisions and seeing what's working best for them, because personally I need a cell phone to have my agenda. Having it in paper, not going to work for me. But I know a lot of people who like to have their agenda and keep it in their purse and have it with them all the time. Everybody's different. And then what you want to also try to do is have them write everything down on the agenda. So when there's a meeting, have them write it down. Again, also different depending on the person. If it's a meeting in 2 weeks and you realize, okay, this is going to be really stressful for them if they remember that there is a meeting, what you might start doing is, in the morning when they wake up, they can write down what the meetings are, so that they have it written, but just for the day, and you keep control of what's later. So they just need to do what's today. Make it personal, and if you want to talk about your personal situation, I'm more than happy to meet with you so that we can make it more adapted to your situation. And then instead of relying on explicit memory only, it's going to be starting to encourage the person to create this habit of looking for their agenda, I think. So, for instance, when they ask, what do we do today? It's, I don't know, let's have a look at the agenda. And then have them look at the agenda. Not you looking for them, but have them look at it. I believe you wrote it down in your agenda. Let's check. Or where could you find that out? Now let's look at another situation where you just bought somebody a new phone and you made sure it was dementia friendly, that it was really just push a button and you're answering the phone, and really as easy as possible. And then you brought it to them and you explained, okay, so whenever you hear the phone ring, you press the button and you answer, and that's it. And they listen to you, they say, oh, that's pretty simple, I can do that. And the next day, they forgot what to do. And you're like, what did I tell you yesterday? They can't remember, which again can be frustrating, can feel like, okay, I'm at my end. what you could do, instead of explaining the task and expecting them to remember the next day, is try to create more of an implicit memory. So that would be having a sound that they associate with the phone ringing, and making sure before anything that they're able to recognize, okay, this is the phone ringing. Okay, this is the phone ringing. Every time they hear the song, they know they have to look at the phone. And once they're able to do that, then it's going to be, okay, I press the green button. And again, there, if you're going to have a list of step by step, that's a good idea. Have them write it with their own words. So that is it for today. If you have other examples that are related to your experience, I'd love to read about them in the comment section. Just give us your examples, what you could think of when you heard the talk. Also, write down your take-home message for today. If you have any take-home message, instead of me telling you what to remember, I'd love to know what you remember. Sneaky me again. If you want to work with me, then please feel free to check out my website. There is a way to book an appointment with me, also to just message me on there, so that we can see how I might be able to support you in the best way possible. Thank you so much for listening, and if you found my talk interesting and useful, feel free to share it with other people. Thank you so much. Bye.